Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tom Moe. I had the privilege and opportunity to serve this great nation as a member of the Naval Reserve and the U.S. Air Force. Shortly after completing Air Force pilot training, I was assigned to combat duty in Vietnam in 1967. I can only imagine how the next year would forever change my life. I would be exposed to situations that I had been well trained for, but had yet to experience firsthand. That training included how to continue the fight as a prisoner of war. Little did I know that I would get to use that training. I had just turned 24 years old in early 1968. I was captured behind enemy lines after I had to eject from my fighter jet, and I was held as a POW for the next 5 years. You can imagine that Donald Trump's dismissive comments about POWs are offensive to me. To denigrate someone who got captured while serving his country in combat reflects a gross lack of understanding not only of the circumstances that landed us in prison, but of the rigors, including torture, that we endured so that our fellow citizens, including him, could go about their lives in peace and exercise their freedom of speech while respecting that same freedom of others. Just a few months ago, when Mr. Trump made his disrespectful comments about my friend and fellow POW, John McCain, I was disgusted. As if that wasn't outrageous enough, Mr. Trump took his comments further by claiming that Senator McCain had somehow made America less safe. I was in prison with John McCain in a Hanoi prison just a few feet from his cell. I watched him and others through a pinhole I had carved in my door as he struggled to walk, even though horribly injured from his ejection and harsh treatment. Neither he nor any of us wavered in our resistance. We were still at war. We were not sitting it out. So I know who John McCain is, and I know his commitment to our nation. There are not many people who can give 5.5 years of their life in a musty prison cell and then continue to serve our nation in the U.S. Senate and be an advocate for a strong and robust military. In doing so, he has fought against those who would make our nation less safe. The recent attacks in Paris remind us that our country is in need, more than ever, of a leader who is qualified and experienced to understand and lead our military. To lead our military with respect, to lead our military with dignity, and a person who can unify this country, talents which Mr. Trump does not seem to exhibit. We are experiencing today increasing discord and more disunity in this country than in recent memory. Can we expect to draw together as a nation and face the increasing threats against our livelihood, against our fundamental freedoms, when a leading candidate for president sows hate and discord against anyone who simply disagrees with him? We have seen too much of this already in the past few years. I say enough is enough. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Jim Brady. I'm a councilman and veteran from Shaker Heights, Ohio. Northeast Ohio is home to thousands of people and their descendants who emerged from Eastern Europe. Poles, Hungarians, Latvians, Albanians, Macedonians, Ukrainians, just to name a few. Ohioans from these ethnic groups are proud of their heritage, proud that they resisted communism and proud of their gains of their home countries, becoming free, joining the EU, and in many cases, joining NATO. I'm proud to be from Northeast Ohio, and I'm proud of the wonderful diversity this heritage brings to Ohio and our nation. When I served as a U.S. Army infantry officer around the world, I saw that same diversity in the military, and I was proud to know I was serving a country that had helped defeat communism and spread freedom. You see, serving in the 90s, many of our missions involved preparing for operations in Eastern Europe. It is shocking and disturbing to hear Donald Trump be so dismissive about the threat that expansionist Russia plays to the free world and so dismissive of the plight of the Ukraine. He repeatedly said or says he thinks he'd get along just fine with Putin. He's bragged about being on TV with him. He said protecting Ukraine and standing up to Russia in Ukraine is a European problem. And he said that he really doesn't care if Ukraine is in NATO or not. Mr. Trump, Vladimir Putin is not our friend. Mr. Trump's failure to understand the threats of a resurgent Russia, appreciation of the violence Putin has brought to the Ukraine, and the anxiety our NATO allies in Eastern Europe feel reveals his naivete, or at least his ignorance of world affairs and just how profoundly unprepared he is to be commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the world. For these reasons and many others, I'm proud to support John Kasich as the next President of the United States. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. My name's Steve Stivers. I'm honored to serve as the congressman from Ohio's 15th Congressional District, but I've also served in the United States military in the Ohio Army National Guard for 30 years. I deployed to Operation Iraqi Freedom for about a year in 2004, 2005, and I'm a graduate of the U.S. Army War College. If Mr. Trump wants to be the commander-in-chief of our military, I think he should rethink a few of his policy positions. I'm really concerned about his unwillingness to stand up against regional aggressors, his plan for avoiding a nuclear Iran or lack of a plan, and his lack of a strategy to deal with ISIS. With regard to regional aggressors, Councilman Brady already talked really eloquently about the Ukraine. I remember my time in the U.S. military training and planning for a Fulda Gap operation in the 1980s. Thank God it never came to be, but a resurgent Russia under Vladimir Putin, who wants to rebuild a Soviet-style empire on the periphery of Russia, is a threat to Western Europe and the United States and the United States' interests. And threats to our allies are threats to us. Our NATO allies are important to us. And frankly, the fact that Mr. Trump does not want or doesn't care if the Ukraine joins NATO really, I think, is very, it makes light of the threat that Russia poses. Not only is Russia's actions a violation of Ukraine's sovereign rights, it's a violation of international law. And I believe we should admit Ukraine into NATO to protect against a resurgent Russia. I think that Mr. Trump should rethink that position. I also am worried about his position with regard to a nuclear Iran. He said that he doesn't mind negotiating with Iran, and he thinks that former President Ahmadinejad has a reason to not like the United States. Well, the problem with that reasoning, or the mistake with that reasoning, is that that's what led to this bad nuclear agreement that we now face. And I think we need to make sure that we stand up and walk away from that nuclear agreement, and also that we use the willingness to potentially use our military forces to prevent a nuclear Iran. And he's walked away from that statement and not been willing to stand up for that. The third thing that Mr. Trump has not done is he has not eloquently stated any strategy to take on ISIS. And he said he would bomb, and I'll use my words, not his, the heck out of them. He used another word. But bombing somebody is not a strategy. And there's only one candidate who's laid out a strategy to defeat ISIS, to strengthen our military, and to deal with regional aggressors. And that person is John Kasich. He laid it out in a speech at the National Press Club a week ago tomorrow. And he explained in eloquent terms how he would do it, in detail how he would do it. And he has a great national security team advising him. And I think that makes a difference. And I think John Kasich is the only person with both executive experience as well as somebody with 18 years of serving on the Armed Services Committee, somebody who understands the threats to our way of life and how our military works and how a national military strategy should be used to preserve America and our ideals. So that's the kind of leadership we should expect. That's why I support Governor Kasich. And today I hope that Mr. Trump will step back from a few of the positions he's had that I think put us at risk. Thank you, and I guess I'll be followed by Colonel Moe.
If you don't mind, Congressman. Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to add one final comment, if I might. I would like anyone who is listening to consider some thoughts that I paraphrase from the words of German pastor Martin Niemöller. You might not care if Donald Trump says Muslims must register with their government because you're not one. And you might not care if Donald Trump says he's going to round up all the Hispanic immigrants because you're not one. And you might not care if Donald Trump says it's okay to rough up black protesters because you're not one. And you might not care if Donald Trump wants to suppress journalists because you're not one. But think about this. If he keeps going and he actually becomes president, he might just get around to you. And you better hope that there's someone left to help you.
We'll take a few questions.
Congressman Stivers, right now, despite multiple debates, the plurality of Republican primary voters appear to support Donald Trump. What does that say about the Republican Party?
Well, I don't think it says anything about the Republican Party. What it says is people are desperate for someone to lead them. And I just hope as they think about that, they think about the fact that we're living in serious times with the ISIS bombing of a Russian airliner, the attacks in Paris, the attack in Mali this weekend or last week. We live in very serious times. And we do need to fix our economy. And you know, I think people say, gee, a businessman might be great. But we also need to look out for our national security. And it's the primary responsibility of any government is to protect its people and its way of life. And I think we need to take that very seriously, and the temperament of the candidates matter, and the policy position of the candidates matter. So I just would ask voters to think about who they want to carry the nuclear codes of the United States government. Yes, sir.
Congressman, when I go to Donald Trump rallies and I speak with voters, a lot of them will point to the fact that, when I ask them, doesn't government experience matter, especially in the wake of the Paris attacks? And a lot of folks will say that they're tired with politicians and they don't see the need for someone with government experience to be able to confront ISIS. They see Trump as a strong leader, someone with conviction who's going to do what he says. Why, in your opinion, isn't that enough?
Because it matters who you listen to and what you know. When asked about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, who his national security advisors were, who he listens to, Mr. Trump said, I watch the shows. That means you guys advise him. He needs a serious team. This is a serious time. And he did say complimentary things of, I think, Ambassador Bolton and a couple other people who happen to appear on a lot of shows, but he's not met with those people, at least as of the time when I saw a news report on, I can't remember where I saw it, maybe CNN or someplace. I don't remember where I saw, but he hadn't even met with the people that he complimented. So it's like he's literally watching them on TV like 300 million other Americans. He needs a team to look out for the American national interest, because it is a primary goal of the United States government to secure our people and our way of life. And I think we need to make sure that we can do that. And so I think he needs to get a team around him. I believe he announced on the Hugh Hewitt show, I think it was September 15th, that he was going to make an announcement soon of who his national security team was. It's almost Thanksgiving and he hasn't announced that yet.
But what I guess is your message to his supporters who say that someone who's, talks a tough game and who says they're going to bomb the hell out of ISIS and all of that, that's enough?
Well, I haven't met any of those supporters who've said that they don't care what somebody knows and who's advising them, but the facts matter and details matter, and it matters that the people that advise you are competent and they know what they're talking about. You can't just say, I'm going to do this, or you can't say, gee, I want to negotiate with Iran, when that's probably a bad idea, and most advisors that would talk to him would say it's a bad idea. You can't say the Ukraine is Europe's problem when we're in NATO with a lot of those countries, and if that expansion continues, it won't be long until Latvia, Lithuania, or Estonia are in Putin's circle, and it would be quicker to stop him now and show him that we have resolve and that we're not going to let him reassemble a Soviet-style empire. So it does matter who advises you, and it does matter what your experience is, and that you know the difference between the Quds forces in Iran and the Kurds forces in Afghanistan. That kind of matters. It's a big deal. Yes, go ahead.
Sarah Murray from CNN. This is a question for all of you guys, and I'm wondering if some of the veterans you guys have up there want to respond to this. But do you worry at all when you hear Donald Trump talk about this, talk about databases for Muslims, and talk about going to, roughing up protesters? Do you feel like that undermines the freedoms that you guys have fought for at all? Is that a concern for you?
Of course it is. No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it hits home for me. I joke when I was in college, I was in ROTC, and I had served in the first Gulf War, and I was in ROTC finishing up college, and there was a big protest. There was an anti-Iraq war protest on campus at the University of Toledo. And a bunch of the guys in ROTC came running up to me, and they were like, "Listen, there's people burning a flag. They're having a protest, on the quad. We need to go do something about it." And I remember looking at them, and I was back from the Gulf, not even a month, and I go, I served there so that people can do that. I served there so that people can make bad decisions or whatever decision they want. And the thought of our nation going in that direction as a veteran, and all the things that we fought for as veterans, it's totally it's anti-American in my perspective, especially as an African American. I mean, when you're singling out when you're singling out a group, that's not the American way, and this is not something that I would look for in a presidential candidate.
I would argue it's not just anti-American, it's counterproductive. If you start making a list of Muslims instead of a list of terrorists that we keep now, maybe you should look at the list of terrorists and update that, and we should identify the folks who really pose a security threat, not people who practice their religion as guaranteed by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. So, it might miss the point. Yes, ma'am.
So there will be thousands and thousands of people likely coming here to Trump speak, as there are at most of his events. How do you get your message through to people, to the other people? Do you believe that there needs to be, you support the coordinated advertising efforts? Do you think there needs to be more of that? Do you think the campaigns need to come together? What would you like to see happen?
Well, I think that's up to the campaigns. What I support is my right to free speech, which I just utilized, and I'm asking you to get that out to people, to hear that there is maybe a little bit of a pushback on some of Mr. Trump's positions. And I think that's the role of the media, to help present both sides of the story, and I hope that happens. And then the American people will do what they want, and the folks who are voting in a Republican primary can choose the candidate of their choice. I'm not telling anybody what to believe. That's not American either. I'm telling them what I believe, and maybe it'll influence a few people. We'll see.
One more question, then we can do one and one.
Congressman, you mentioned temperament. I guess I'm curious as to whether you believe that a President Donald Trump's temperament would be dangerous.
Well, I will tell you, I'm concerned about somebody that wants to get in a Twitter war with other celebrities, and what their temperament would be with other world leaders. People can always modify their temperament or change it. And maybe it's a good day for Mr. Trump to look in the mirror and ask himself whether he thinks he has the temperament to be president and whether he should modify his behavior. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.